USA Today Washington Bureau Chief Susan Page joins us now. So good morning, Susan.
Good morning.
There is a furious back and forth between the White House, the publisher, and author Michael Wolff. Michael Wolff is standing by his reporting this morning. He said the president has, quote, lost it. Who has the upper hand here, Susan?
Well, I think that, that storm coverage you just showed on the East Coast, that is nothing compared to what's going on inside the White House in response to this book, because this book is a very serious development for the White House. It's got all these gossipy details, but more seriously, there's evidence in there are reports in the book that go to the Russia investigation, could have legal repercussions. And there's also, as Chip was saying, the portrait of a president in a White House that is really quite dysfunctional.
So you would say the White House is on defense at this moment?
Yes, I think the White House is on defense. And one of the things that is, I think, alarming for the White House is that there have been these negative stories about how the president's function is being impulsive and reckless and uninformed in the past from Democrats, from anonymous sources. That's been a consistent theme of coverage of the president. But now we have on-the-record quotes from the president's most senior and closest advisors that go to how the White House works or doesn't work.
But, Susan, there's also an issue about whether some of these comments were actually off the record. I wonder if you can talk about that a little bit. And Michael Wolff says in the introduction of the book, this is a version I believe to be true. Is that problematic in any way?
Well, it is, and we don't know that everything reported in this book is true, but I do think it's notable that there's been pushback to whether things were off the record, not to whether they were said. There's pushback to attacks on Michael Wolff and on Steve Bannon, but they don't go to the substance of the content of the book. There's been less pushback on that, and that is what in Washington we might call a kind of form of confirmation.
Mm-hmm. Want to talk about some of the more serious charges that are outlined in the New York Times today that deal with investigation by the special counsel Robert Mueller. The New York Times has some incredible detailing in this reporting, and I just want to read to you, and I know you've read the report, Michael Schmidt in the New York Times, that the special counsel has received handwritten notes from Mr. Trump's former chief of staff, Reince Priebus, showing that Mr. Trump talked to Mr. Priebus about how he called Mr. Comey to urge him to say publicly that he was not under investigation. And then the New York Times is reporting that even some of President Trump's own White House lawyers tried to took the extraordinary step of misleading Mr. Trump about whether he had the authority to remove him. His own lawyers.
You know, what's the lesson from the Watergate investigation, from the Whitewater investigation and more? It's that often the big problems arise for a White House, not from a crime, but from a cover-up. And this New York Times report goes straight to that point about whether there were efforts by the president and the White House to obstruct the FBI investigation. And there's also evidence in this reporting this morning that reinforces the arguments, the allegations that James Comey made, the fired FBI director, that the White House and the president have denied and called lies.
All right, Susan Page, thank you.